had a great, one of our team participants had a great idea, in fact this one here, who suggested that a great way to bring play and game into the process of Plays the Thing was to set little competitions. And we had one called the Speed Talk competition where people who propose an idea that they wanted to ventilate in front of you for 5 minutes would, I think, get a free ticket, a free pass to the event. And these would be, the best of these would be voted on, and was it the top 5 or the top 4? I can't remember. Anyway,
top 3.
Top three would be speaking at a conference, and this is the #1 winner of the Plays the Thing Speed Talk competition. His name is Jules Evans. He is the policy director at the Centre for the History of Emotions at Queen Mary University in London. He's also the author of the blog, The Politics of Wellbeing.com, fantastic blog, absolutely recommend you to go there. And he's also the co-organiser of the London Philosophy Club. And before we go through Felicia's agenda with our guests on the panel, which I'll introduce in a minute, Jules is going to talk about democratising the definitions of wellbeing.
Thank you, Pat. Hello everyone, my name is Jules. I actually won a competition, as Pat said, to be here, so in many ways I'm the Susan Boyle of this. I'm going to try something very quickly. I'd like, William, would you just briefly write down what you think well-being is? So well-being is ... Kate, would you do the same, please? Well-being is, well, but now we need to write what we think well-being is.
11 dots.
Maybe you think it is dots. Doesn't have to be that long, William. William's writing me an essay. Just a few words. Thank you. Okay. So according to William, well-being is having a purpose and direction in life. According to Kate, well-being is a sense of stability mixed with excitement. So those are two slightly different, there's some similarities but also some differences there in their definitions of well-being. Throughout the whole course of humanity, there have been many, many different definitions and philosophies of well-being. Some people, like the Epicureans, for example, define it as individuals' good feelings. The utilitarians define it as the greatest happiness of the greatest number. Now you might wonder, what if you're a minority? Well, then they would say it doesn't matter so much as long as it's the maximum total happiness. Christians would say it's the kind of happiness or the salvation of the religious tribe. Stoics would say it's being in harmony with the universe. So there's lots of different philosophies. They would have different ideas about whose well-being is important. Is it the individual? Is it the tribe? Is it perhaps future generations? Is it just humans? A Buddhist would say it was the well-being of all beings that are important. They'd say, when is well-being important? Is it your happiness now? Is it your happiness in the future? Is it your happiness in the afterlife? Or your well-being in the afterlife? They'd have different definitions of what well-being is. And because of all these multiplicity of different definitions, governments have felt, on the whole, that at least they felt in the last 50 years that they shouldn't be in the business of telling us how to be happy. They shouldn't try to define well-being, because we've got so many different views of it that if we had a kind of official version of well-being, then inevitably that would mean some people defining it and imposing their definition on everyone else. So Isaiah Berlin put forward this famous definition that governments should only protect our negative liberty. If they got into the business of positive liberty, then that would inevitably involve some kind of coercion. And for that reason, governments have steered clear of the kind of the politics of well-being for the last 50 years. But in the last 10 years, they've suddenly become more confident that we can know definitively what well-being is. Why is that? That's basically because of this growth of the science of well-being in the last 10 years. Things like cognitive behavioural therapy, positive psychology, work on measuring happiness by people like Ed Diener, this has done some wonderful things, really useful work. I was helped by CBT myself when I was in my 20s, so it's done a lot of very useful things in putting some of these ideas of well-being on an evidence base. But even within that science of well-being, there's lots of disagreement, lots of different ideas. Even within positive psychology, there are more hedonic, positive psychologists who think what's important are pleasant feelings, and there are more Aristotelian positive psychologists who think what's important is, meaningful happiness. So there's still a lot of confusion and debate about different types of well-being. Nonetheless, what's happened in the last 2 years in Britain is that the Office of National Statistics has been given the order by David Cameron to come up with a specific definition of well-being for our entire country and then measure it, which is a bit of a poison chalice they've been passed. But nonetheless, they've gone away and tried to do this. How did they come up with their official definition of well-being? They had a national debate for about 6 months, which had some meetings in town halls with people like us. But there was no kind of vote or kind of referendum or anything like that. But they did have a panel of experts, about 20 experts, and really I think that was where their idea of how to define and measure well-being came from. And this panel was entirely made up of economists and social scientists. There wasn't a single philosopher on there, or artist, or religious figure. I think the CEO of Waitrose was on it as well. But there was no one from the humanities on there. And so how did they define well-being? They defined it as, they would ask you, how happy are you and how satisfied with life are you? So really, what happened there, I don't know if none of us really noticed, was there was suddenly we've become a utilitarian country. We have an official definition of well-being, it's a utilitarian definition. So there was a kind of a coup d'etat, and suddenly, Jeremy Bentham has risen from his glass cabinet in University College and taken over our country, which I think is a mistake, because I think that is going against our ability to reason about these different definitions of well-being. I would say even positive psychology, which has more of a plural attitude to well-being, can still be quite prescriptive. So now in the US Army, every American soldier takes a resilience training program designed by Martin Seligman. Sure. To train them in resilience and well-being, every soldier has to now take a barrage of questionnaires to test how kind of their emotional fitness, I think their social fitness, even their spiritual fitness. And if they score too low on these questionnaires, a box pops up and says, spiritual fitness may be a problem area for you. Please consult the relevant self-development modules. I find that problematic. Seligman has come up with various different definitions of well-being: meaningful happiness, purposeful happiness, positive emotions. But I think what's missing from positive psychology is the role of reasoning and moral judgment. For example, you could serve a higher meaning, but is the higher meaning you're serving a good meaning? Is it a worthwhile meaning? I mean, you might be a member of a far-right political group and be very involved in it, but is that a worthwhile cause? So I think there's an important role for reasoning, public reasoning and moral judgment, the ethics and values part of well-being, which is being left out if we try to pretend that there's a perfect objective science of it. So that's what I'd like to bring in. I very much welcome what positive psychology and other sciences have done, but I think if we're going to teach well-being in schools, we should not only teach them the kind of scientific skills and the evidence, but we should give them space to understand the different traditions of well-being and to reason towards it and talk about it and make up their own minds. Thank you.